From the West, not everything was dust. Between the mid-19th century and the early 20th, the U.S. expanded its frontiers, created myths, fueled conflicts, and turned people into legends. In this video, 50 finds from little-explored archives and expert interviews reveal behind-the-scenes stories, challenge popular versions, and invite you to revisit this history. Number 1. Lynched in 1881, outlaw George Big Nose Parrott had his body handed over to Wyoming doctor and politician John E. Osborne. Osborne had boots made out of Parrott's skin and wore them at his inauguration as governor. His skin also became a briefcase. The skull, sawed open, was used as an ashtray, doorstop, and pencil holder by Lillian Held. Finally, Osborne and Thomas Mackey dissected the brain looking for signs of criminal behavior. The story became a symbol of morbid curiosity. Number 2. In 1850, Allan Pinkerton founded an agency that changed the way crime was pursued. By organizing files, collecting portraits, and testing, before anyone else, the use of fingerprints, he created a method that would later guide the FBI. Under this network, Jesse James and the James Younger gang backed off. The notoriety opened doors. His agents began escorting politicians and tycoons, enforcing discipline. From then on, his influence only grew. Number 3. John Wesley Hardin, a feared figure of the Old West, boasted of having taken 41 lives. He served more than 20 years in prison, and in 1895 met his end. John Selman surprised him and shot him down in an El Paso saloon. Long before that, in Abilene, a night of gambling and drinking ended in tragedy. Staying next to Charles Huger, he got irritated by his neighbor's snoring, aimed at the wall, and fired, killing him before he even woke up. Number 4. In 1872, riding the gold rush fever, Philip Arnold and John Slack announced a secret field in Colorado. They salted the ground with diamonds and rubies, placing them right where the first shovels would hit. Bankers and politicians bought shares after visits where stones appeared, and urgency for rare lots skyrocketed. Until geologist Clarence King examined the samples, noticed recent cuts, an unlikely mix, and a lack of natural signs, exposing the scam. Number 5. On the banks of the Clear and Brazos rivers, Fort Griffin became a famous stage of the Old West. From a discreet outpost, it turned into a crossroads where cowboys, gunmen, buffalo hunters, fugitives, gamblers, and women of the night all passed through. Its reputation earned it the nickname Babylon on the Brazos. Figures like John Wesley Hardin, Doc Holliday, and Kate expanded the legend of a place shaped by freedom and disorder. Number 6. The son of enslaved people, Bass Reeves escaped during the Civil War and found refuge in Indian Territory. There he learned languages, built alliances, and came to know the land. After peace, he became a federal deputy marshal west of the Mississippi, the first black man in the role. Serving under Judge Isaac Parker, he tracked down and arrested more than 3,000 outlaws, feats that echoed in the myth that later inspired the Lone Ranger. Number 7. Known as Black Bart, the poet, Charles E. Bowles left England for New York and, swept up by the fever of 1849, headed to the Carolinas. There, the promise of gold gave way to the roads. He began robbing Wells Fargo stagecoaches. Polite and sharp-tongued, he turned holdups into performances and left behind verses as his signature. He carried out 28 robberies before being caught. After his release, he abandoned crime and, back in New York, ended his journey in 1917. Number 8. Orphaned early, Martha Jane Canary grew up among trails and rumors. She took on tasks considered masculine, guided her siblings, worked in camps, and learned to negotiate with the harshness of the frontier. Courage and loyalty brought her fame, while versions of her story clashed. Friends confirmed, critics denied, newspapers exaggerated. At the end of each account, the same question remained: ordinary woman or calculated spectacle? Number 9. In the Old West, whiskey was more than a drink. It was a ritual nicknamed Firewater. To impress tribes, peddlers would toss a stream of it onto a campfire. Flames leapt up, sealing the pitch. The brew, often crude, mixed raw alcohol, burnt sugar, and chewing tobacco. A single swig was enough for cowboys and gunmen to understand why this concoction fueled business, deals, and nights across the West. Number 10. In 1874, Alfred Packer left the Rocky Mountains with 5 companions, but only he returned months later, vague in his explanations. Searches in Lake City found mutilated bodies. Reports pointed to murder and cannibalism. Packer claimed he had acted in self-defense and under extreme hunger. The jury convicted him, and the episode lived on in books and films, sparking debates over guilt, survival, and how far desperation can go. Number 11. In 1911, after a shootout in Oklahoma, Elmer J. McCurdy died without anyone claiming his body. The funeral home owner embalmed him and turned him into an attraction. For a penny, the public could see the body dressed up with a rifle. Years later, men claiming to be his brothers took him, and he traveled through carnivals, ended up in a warehouse in Los Angeles, and was rediscovered in 1949. Only 27 years later was he finally buried, ending his wandering. Number 12. A whistle cuts through the night. John and Simeon Reno carry out the first major train robbery in the U.S. The target is an Ohio and Mississippi railway train. From the safe, they snatch about $13,000, a sum that could buy entire farms. The feat echoed. Jesse James and others copied the method. By mapping routes and shifts, the Renos picked the exact moment and struck in the dark. From then on, train robbery became a manual of the West and raw material for movies. Number 13. In the Old West, Jesse James became a synonym for crime, but many pointed to Frank, his older brother, as the harsher spark. Together with the James Younger gang, they robbed banks and spread death. In 1882, Jesse was assassinated. Frank went to the governor, surrendered his weapons, and never rested. Acquitted, he left outlaw life behind, worked for decades, and died in 1915, closing that bloody chapter. Number 14. In 1892, in Wyoming, cattle barons decided to crush small ranchers. Without evidence, they branded neighbors as thieves and hired gunmen. Fences were cut, houses burned, and people executed without trial. Fear swept through families and left land ruined until federal intervention stopped the escalation. The episode revealed an old script. When the law falters, money tries to rule, and the warning still echoes. Number 15. James Killer Miller, known as Deacon Jim, roamed the Old West as a constant presence. Accused of 14 killings and suspected of dozens more, he's even cited as a possible killer of Pat Garrett. Paradoxically, he didn't drink or smoke and served in the Methodist Church, helping with services. He protected his chest with a steel plate and survived 4 bullets. In 1909, he was lynched, shattering his aura of invincibility and cementing his reputation as one of the West's most contradictory figures. Number 16. Up until the 1870s, the West was open range. Cattle roamed freely, and small ranchers feared their animals would disappear into the herds of the big ones. In 1873, Joseph Glidden patented barbed wire. Cheap and effective, it fenced off properties, organized pastures, and stopped intrusions. Texas cattle drives lost their purpose, borders hardened, and the horizon turned into a checkerboard of fences that redrew local power. Number 17. In 1870, on the road between Elizabethtown and Taos, a traveler sought shelter in the cabin of Charles Kennedy, an innkeeper and husband of Rose, who was Ute. Before dinner, the couple's son whispered that his father was going to kill the guest. The threat came true with a gunshot, and the boy was murdered to silence the revelation. From then on, Kennedy perfected the trap. He welcomed passers-by, robbed them, and used blood to cover each theft. Number 18. In 19th-century newspapers, Belle Starr, born Myra Maybelle Shirley Reed, became the face of Indian Territory. Raised among names like Jesse and Frank James, she married Cherokee Sam Starr and gradually got involved with horse theft gangs. Between elegance and her pistol, she saw court cases and reports spread her fame. In 1889, she died in an ambush without culprits, and the mystery fixed her legend in the Old West. Number 19. In the 1870s in Kansas, the Benders ran a small inn while travelers kept disappearing in the area. Suspicious neighbors organized searches. Rumors of witchcraft spread, but nothing solid came up until the final inspection. Bodies in the cellar. From there, the chase intensified. The Benders were killed, and Katie died in a fire. The episode became a dark legend of the West, a reminder that the road could also swallow those who traveled it. Number 20. In 1895, Mary Fields, Stagecoach Mary, became the first black woman in the U.S. Postal Service. Armed with rifle and revolver, she crossed Montana under sun, mud, or blizzard, never missing her route. Over time, prejudice gave way to respect. She cleared trails, crossed frozen rivers, and delivered everything. In a time that wanted her out of the picture, she kept the mail moving and proved that courage also drives the country forward. Number 21. In the Old West, gamblers preferred to sit with their backs to the wall so they could watch the door. In 1876, in Deadwood, James Butler Hickok, Wild Bill, did the same at Nuttall and Mann's saloon. The front door seemed under control, but Jack McCall came around, slipped in through the back, and shot him point blank, ending the career of the most famous gunfighter in the region in an instant that would become a lasting legend. Number 22. In California, Bodie sprang up during the gold fever of the 1870s. Bars, brothels, and gambling tables packed the main street, while outsiders rushed to dig for fortune. Then came the downfall. Fires swept through blocks, mines dried up, and the town froze in time. Today, the park shows creaking doors and untouched storefronts. There are reports of footsteps, shadows, and a cold saloon. The legend is clear. Whoever takes something from there carries bad luck until it's returned. Number 23. Mary Catherine Harney, Big Nose Kate, learned early that life changes fast. Orphaned and raised in a foster home, she was widowed and headed to Texas, where she danced in saloons and sold sex. That's where she met Doc Holliday. From that meeting came partnership and danger. When he was jailed, Kate hatched a plan, set fire to a shed, and in the chaos cleared the way for his escape. She wasn't chasing glory. She wanted to choose her own path and protect the man she chose to follow. Number 24. In Tombstone, 1881, the town split. On one side, the Cowboys and Sheriff Bean. On the other, the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday. The shootout at the OK Corral lasted half a minute and sparked a wave of retaliation. What followed were ambushes, makeshift trials, and sleepless nights. Morgan was shot in the back. Wyatt struck back with a firm hand. When the dust settled, the lesson was clear. Here, law came late, and vengeance cost dearly. Number 25. In the Old West, the bandana wasn't just decoration. It went with the hat, gun, and horse, serving in every journey, filtering dust on cattle drives, protecting the neck from the sun, steadying hot pots, and warming ears at night. With just a knot, it turned into a mask, useful for those who worked in the shadows. In this way, it became a badge of trade and resilience in harsh lands, where living demanded ingenuity and caution. Number 26. In 1881 in Fort Sumner, Billy the Kid, or William H. Bonney, was said to have fallen to Sheriff Pat Garrett's bullets, a version Robert M. Utley supports. At 21, he already filled ballads and pamphlets, and his fame never faded. His grave became a pilgrimage site and target of vandalism. The headstone was stolen twice and is now chained. Still, doubt persists. Did he die there, or does the possibility of escape keep the myth alive? Number 27. In 1865, Alice Ivers left England, studied at a boarding school, and settled in Colorado. In noisy saloons, she learned poker and made her debut in Creed, at the bar of Bob Ford, the man who killed Jesse James. Her skill, combined with charisma, earned her the nickname Poker Alice. Packed tables, sharp eyes, and big winnings, like $6,000 in a single night. In 1910, after killing a soldier in her own saloon, she was arrested, closing her chapter in the Old West. Number 28. In the Superstition Mountains, in Arizona's desert, lives a stubborn story. At the end of the 19th century, a German immigrant called the Dutchman supposedly found a gold mine and died without revealing its location. What followed were canyon hunts, repeated expeditions, disputed maps, and misleading trails. Locals speak of a curse, disappearances, falls, lights, and voices in the wind. Newspapers spread the tale, and the promise of riches still fuels the search. Number 29. Canadian Pearl Hart once saw a Buffalo Bill show and decided to change her path. At 17, she ran from home to Arizona, married Joe Wood, and turned to crime. In 1899, the couple robbed a stagecoach. They lost their way in the desert and were caught. The story spread nationwide. She was the second woman to pull off such a robbery and the first to survive it. Convicted, she served 18 months and was pardoned due to the lack of women's cells. Number 30. In Western saloons, cards slapped on tables and smoke drew veils in the air. Among the tables, Canada Bill Jones ran the three-card game. First the smile, then the trick that threw off even veterans. He liked to say that money handed to a swindler belongs to whoever's smart enough to take it. Walking the same trail was Doc Holliday, adding to the legends. There, chips, glances, and calculated steps wove destiny, and every turn of a card could lift a life up or crush it down. Number 31. Imagine riding 1,950 miles to deliver news in record time. In 1860, the Pony Express did just that. Letters and newspapers left Missouri and reached Sacramento in about 10 days, thanks to riders and horses switching every 12 miles. The impact was huge, but short-lived. In just 18 months, the company piled up $110,000 in losses, lost the support of the Postal Service, and became a brief but decisive chapter in U.S. communication. Number 32. When the railroad changed course or the mine dried up, towns were left adrift. In that vacuum, swindlers thrived. They promised the reopening of a vein and offered exclusive shares. They showed off purchased nuggets, quoted a geologist, and pressed with a now or never. Fear pushed people into line. Once the deposit was paid, they vanished. With no oversight, brokers came back with worn maps and saloon rumors, feeding the spiral of losses. Number 33. In 1856, the U.S. Army tested camels to cross the deserts of the West and South. Inspired by troops in Asia and Africa, they brought 66 from the Middle East and housed them at Camp Verde, Texas. They marched long distances and impressed officers, but discipline failed. Grumbling and spitting turned people against them. With the Civil War, the program ended and the animals were sold or released. Number 34. Crawford Goldsby, known as Cherokee Bill, was born in 1876, the son of a black man and a Cherokee woman. As a teenager, he dove into robberies and killings in Indian Territory, today's Oklahoma. Federal pressure grew and his name spread through stagecoaches and saloons. Arrested at 20, he was sentenced to hang for murder. On the gallows, he taunted, "Hurry up the rope!" His short path shows the clash of cultures and the laws that shaped the West. Number 35. Among Plains tribes, scalping became a combat trophy and proof of skill, later linked to the Apaches. As settlers pushed west, they adopted the practice to spread fear and control. In the 19th century, even during the Civil War, the tactic gained attention in guerrilla actions. The name of William Bloody Bill Anderson became the symbol of this violent peak, with killings that shocked the country. Number 36. In 1890 in Tombstone, 2 hunters claimed they shot down a winged creature. The Epitaph newspaper mentioned a photo of the body stretched out in a barn, but the image never surfaced, even though locals swore they'd seen it. Without proof, the story spread. Legendary bird, dinosaur, or newsroom trick. The paradox is that the absence kept the myth alive, and one question still sparks. So, whatever happened to the photo? Number 37. On stormy nights, St. Elmo's fire appears when the air gets ionized by strong electric fields. On old ships' masts, it was seen as a good omen. Later, on the western plains, the rare glow leapt to cattle horns and horses' ears. Those silent shapes outlined in the darkness cut short laughter and bravery, reminding cowboys and outlaws alike that nature casts the final move. Number 38. Charley Parkhurst crossed the West disguised as a man and took the reins of California stagecoaches. Through dust and storms, he kept course on bad curves and under bandits' guns. In one ambush, he held the line and saved passengers and cargo. When he died in 1879, the revelation came. He was a woman, and may even have voted. Since then, one question has run through taverns and archives. Who was really in charge there? The coach, or the very idea of destiny? Number 39. In Western movies, you almost only see white cowboys. On the range, the story was different. About a quarter of cowboys were black. They drove herds, branded, broke horses, and faced rodeos. During the Civil War, with ranchers away, enslaved people kept the ranches running. After abolition, freed men stayed in the work and supported families, shaping a West that Hollywood rarely shows. Number 40. Between 1886 and 1887, winter slammed the Great Plains with ice and wind. In just days, fences collapsed, trails vanished, and herds scattered, the Great Dieup. Many ranchers saw their cattle wiped out. Estimates speak of hundreds of thousands of head lost. The shock reshaped ranching. Stronger fences, stored feed, and winter management became the rule to face the next cold fronts. Number 41. In the Old West, reward money only came with solid proof. The wanted man in the sheriff's hands. For years, that meant dragging corpses for miles under sun and dust. The arrival of photography changed the ritual. It was enough to take the dead man to a studio, frame his face, and move on. Many were propped up by assistants against a wall. The click sealed the capture and counted as a receipt before the body gave way to silence. Number 42. Since the late 19th century, Marfa in southwest Texas has lived with lights that flare up on the horizon, vanish, and return as if following a secret calendar. Researchers from the University of Texas tried to explain them. Headlights, mirages, gases, nothing stuck. On clear nights, travelers gather at the lookout, wait for the desert to darken, and when the silence sharpens the air, they see the orbs reappear and dance before everyone. Number 43. In Old West saloons, daily life mixed with risk. Among gunmen and strangers, a toast could spark fights and gunfire. The image that movies enshrined contrasts with the modest origins, flimsy tents that barely stood up. In Kansas City, the Long Branch became a landmark. The original burned down in 1895 was rebuilt and thus preserved the memory of this stage of tension and celebration. Number 44. The gold rush and railroads brought thousands of Chinese immigrants to the West. The journey of Li Wen sums it up. 14-hour days, tents, dynamite, low pay, and prejudice. On the transcontinental, they blasted tunnels. In some stretches, 9 out of 10 workers were Chinese. As contracts dried up, they moved on to San Francisco and Seattle, running laundries and kitchens. Xenophobic laws, culminating in the 1882 Act, shut doors and left scars. Number 45, called Sitting Bull, Tatanka Iotanka led the Sioux in the 19th century. A persistent warrior, he tried to negotiate to protect his people and saw the land and animals as moral authority. He resisted the advance of the United States and Canada until surrender and relocation to a reservation. Later, he joined Buffalo Bill's show for 4 months, toured 2 continents, and left the show, rejecting that way of life. Number 46, William Buffalo Bill. Cody turned his own career as a scout and hunter into a business. With Buffalo Bill's Wild West, he brought a version of the frontier to the arena. Ropers, horse races, and at the center, Native Americans, including Sitting Bull, staging battles with settlers. The caravan toured the U.S. and Europe, impressed Queen Victoria, and spread his fame, while criticism grew for turning native cultures into spectacle. Number 47. In the Old West, women were a minority. In small towns, there were 3 men for every woman. During the California Gold Rush, the ratio reached 9-1. To keep tables full and drinks flowing, saloons hired them to sing, dance, and make conversation. The stigma was heavy, though not all sold sex. Many held a curious place. They earned respect, were treated as ladies, and navigated between fun, work, and the social conventions of the time. Number 48. Old outlaws of the West asked for graves with what defined them: a revolver, a deck of cards, a bottle of whiskey. They swore it would help them on the crossing and keep their fame after the last shot. Those who touched a worn deck said they could feel the owner's hand. Over time, cemeteries became attractions. The hunt for relics opened graves and spread rumors. Still, the West was bigger. Immigrant railroads, subtle scams, native myths, pioneers, and saloons where fear spoke. Number 49. Geronimo, born in Sonora, became a symbol of Apache resistance in the 19th century. Still young, he was moved to the area of today's New Mexico and refused confinement in reservations, fighting both Mexicans and Americans to preserve his people's autonomy. Defeated in battle, he ended up converting to Christianity, selling bows, arrows, and photographs. His journey shows the weight of colonial impositions and how memory and dignity keep the fight alive.